24, sunny this afternoon. Dr. Kelly Wilson now joins us. Dr. Wilson?
Yes, Tom.
So, do you ever call when there's anything cheery going on?
You know, I'm thinking we got to figure something else out here.
It's true. You're always calling this terrible. Do you mind if we talk about two subjects? Because I want to ask you. I don't know if you were listening just a bit ago. The young woman.
You're going to ask me about global warming?
No, we're not going to ask you about global warming. Not at all. Why do women stay with men who abuse them? I'll never understand that.
I think, it's different for everyone, but my sense on that is that we stay with people who treat us the way we feel we deserve to be treated.
Ooh.
And when you're in a relationship with a person, it starts out usually verbally, and then it moves into the physical realm. It belittles and takes even more away from your self-esteem, and you, in some ways, think you deserve that.
So, in other words, last week when Catherine had a little blemish and she sat me down and said, "This is your fault."
Well, it could have been, Tom. I wasn't there.
Apparently, I stress her out quite a bit, so she blamed a small blemish on me.
At least it was only one.
Yes, that's true, and it didn't last very long either. It's just a sad, sad story, and I don't understand. And again, I'm not trying to lay blame on anybody, but you'd think a brother or a cousin or a father or somebody would step in and go, "You know what, pal? You're dead."
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how involved they actually were in the kid's day-to-day life or his day-to-day feelings or condition. And clearly the mom was very involved and really kind of taking care of this kid. But it's a sad situation, and the disorder that has been flying around that he has, Asperger's disorder, is one that I've dealt with before in various criminal cases. And, it can look different in every single individual. Most of the folks that have that are the victims of attacks more than they actually ever attack anyone,
Bullying. Yeah, they get bullied quite a bit.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
So they're certain that this, I don't want to even say his name, they're certain that the shooter had Asperger's?
Well, I've heard that reported. It was reported on a 60 Minutes piece last night as well. So I wouldn't be surprised based on the information that is leaked out regarding how he used to behave in school, extremely nervous around people, carrying a briefcase, kind of even huddling up to lockers when people would walk by. And you have to think, living life with that kind of disorder, and if it was that severe for this particular kid, how agonizing just day-to-day life could be for someone like that.
So why didn't they get this guy help? Maybe
they did. What do you do for them?
I mean, there's only so much you can do. And sometimes people, their difficulties and their frustration, folks who have Asperger's disorder, basically, just very basically, they usually are able to talk and communicate and be very, very bright, very high-functioning folks.
Right.
In some cases, but the problem is, it's this social skill and this nonverbal communication recognition that misses them. And a good example of something like that would be standing in line at Super America at 6:30 in the morning, and there's 15 people in line, and there's a person standing there who's already paid, and they're just verbally vomiting all over the person behind the desk, not seeing the looks like, "Get out of here, I've got to help the next customer." I mean, just don't pick up on social cues.
Oh, maybe I have it.
Well, usually, and I know a few people who either have children with Asperger's or have Asperger's themselves, and the people that I know, they don't like to shake hands or things like that, and they'll say hello to you or whatever, but violence would seem to be the last thing that the people would resort to.
Yeah, I think it depends. Most of them, I think, do not engage in violence. Again, most of the time they're victims, but there is this, if the reaction to the frustration that they feel regularly in life is external, if they reach out and act out externally based on frustrations, then they can get violent, but it's just like any other kind of kid who externalizes their frustration and acts out against other kids.
Right.
I was going to ask you, Kelly, they said that a couple of things. I heard that he was being homeschooled at that point, and then Zepp said the mom was a survivalist.
No, I didn't say the mom was a survivalist. I said I read in a story that someone insinuated that she may be one of these preppers.
Okay. And then that the brother wasn't surprised that it happened. So she obviously has guns around the kid. Mm-hmm. They had to know that he was strange. The dad just remarries, and then he's not living in the town the way it sounded. So the kid, they said, took that really hard. It's like, why are gun owners being blamed? I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, Terry, I think the thing is that when things of this nature, this horrifying, when the most blameless, innocent victims imaginable are just gunned down in such a horrifying way, where you've got an individual who clearly wanted no survivors. You don't plug that many rounds into little people like that if your intent is not to have no survivors and going for some number. And so we don't know if he wanted to go after the most young kids or if they just happened to be the first place he could get when he walked into school. But when people do things like that, people want to find an answer for it, a quick and easy answer. And I was on the radio yesterday on another station, and
there are no other radio stations
in another state.
There were texters that were going in saying it's video games or it's guns or it's antidepressants, and there is no single explanation. Nothing can ever explain this, and even when we find out what the so-called motive may have been, it's not going to alleviate anything, and it's not really going to prevent anything. I think the only thing we can do is take solace in the notion, even though people don't believe this, these incidents are very, very, very rare. They're very, very rare. Our schools are safe. Some of the safest schools in the world. And if someone is absolutely hell-bent on getting into a school and killing people, having teachers armed or things like that are not going to do a whole lot.
It could have stopped it, Kelly. If one of those teachers was armed, but it could have stopped it.
The problem is, Terry, they'd have to all be armed, because if you're on the other side of the school, you're not going to stop them.
Well, you could have quite a few armed and just not have it public knowledge who is. I mean, it's just, to me, I'm sorry, but that's just common sense. I don't know.
Yeah, and that very well, somebody could have certainly stopped him sooner. I think the knee-jerk reaction for most folks, this is happening in a matter of seconds, and people are, diving in front of kids and getting kids out of the way, not unlocking a safe and grabbing a weapon. There was no time.
They said they could. It took a while to kill those kids with the way he was doing it.
One example is this shooting out in Portland at the mall.
Right.
There was an armed man in there. A story I read over the weekend. There was an armed private citizen in there when the shooter came in and was walking down the center of the mall. And he pulled his weapon out and jumped behind a pillar, had his girlfriend and their child lay down on the ground behind the fountain, or on the floor behind the fountain. He jumped behind a pillar and pulled his weapon, but was unable to shoot him. Because he wasn't trained to do that, like a law enforcement official might be. And the other thing is he was worried about hitting bystanders. Your average citizen in that type of adrenaline rush situation, pulling out a weapon is more likely to hit someone else. And I don't disagree with you, Terry. I think that it is a good deterrent and is a good thing to have out there. But for us to believe that that's just going to end these sort of things. No,
I wasn't saying that it was. Yeah. But you heard the kid in the gym class saying we were hearing him. Shooting them, and they were helpless because not one person in there had a gun.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a teacher blow this guy's head off 5 feet after he came in the door. That would have been nice. And
they buzzed him in. So as far as
I'm just saying knee-jerk reactions in either way, trying to get rid of guns or trying to arm our teachers. I think I agree with the doc here. That's just not. These things are going to happen, and there's not much we can do about it.
I think he shot his way in, Terry.
He did shoot his way in.
From what I heard today. He shot his way in.
The earliest report was that they buzzed him in.
Yeah, all the reports have changed. Just about everything on this has been misreported, and you got to kind of go back and reread a story and not watch it on the television. You have to go in and actually reread the stories about every hour that are being updated. That's how often it's changing. There is no responsible journalism where these are reality shows that are going there and being exploitive. They're not news programs. That are providing us with facts.
I'm sorry. I think one thing that's important to understand about this kind of guy, trying to make sense of all this, we're never going to really have a full story or really understand it, and the motive will never be enough to excuse what he did. There aren't most people who may or may not have a disorder that he may or may not have would never ever do something like this. And so I think the important thing is to remember that, this guy was intentional in what he was doing, and I think the best place to stop these things from happening is not at the tail end at the school. Not to say that there aren't very valid arguments about arming people and protecting kids and having security guards. I'm not against that at all. I had 2 kindergartners in school that day, and it took everything I had not to go pull them out of school.
Right.
But I think the point is that when people do things like this, I feel very strongly that just snapping suddenly out of the blue does not happen.
No.
There is this smoldering, festering anger, frustration, inability to deal with it, blaming other people for your problems. And there are always signs, almost always in every case, whenever something like this happens, there are clear signs, clear things that they've said, and that where people could intervene. And so what I would say is it's really important that even if someone says something 100 times, I'm thinking of doing this, or I want to kill somebody, or I'm going to do that, over time people start to think, oh, they're just blowing smoke. They don't really mean it. But if they keep saying it, know that it's because they're still thinking about it. They're continuing to entertain it. And if people are saying that, if you can take steps to do something to prevent it, do it.
What do you do? What do you do with these people, though?
Call 911. Bring them to an emergency room, especially if you've got a person who's got a mental disorder that they're suffering with for a long time. There are other events like the triple murder that happened up in Little Falls, where I'm sure this guy had been threatening for a long time, over and over and over again. And people just think, well, he wouldn't do that. He loves his kids. People do these things when they get to a point where they feel sufficiently wronged and they want to take out their rage on someone else. They will do the things that they've been threatening for a long time. And so the point to stop him is before he ever gets to the front door of that school being armed. It's not, way before that. And I think the mom, from what I've heard, and again, we don't know, but was very involved, kind of knew this kid was spiraling, probably had some recent stressors that made life worse for him, and decided he wanted to destroy that community. You don't kill that many totally innocent people without wanting to absolutely destroy the community and destroy the survivors and make a name for yourself.
The answer is, if you've got a relative that reminds you of an angry Boo Radley, take him to the doctor.
Well, what the heck do you do with them? I mean, there's probably...
You take them to the experts. The experts know what they're doing.
You take them into the emergency room if they're threatening to kill people.
No, I meant real doctors.
No, I just meant overall in life. How do you live with that day in and day out, and where's the solution? Institutionalize them?
I don't think there is a solution, because most people that are mentally ill would never do this. And so we can't just lock everybody up who's ever been diagnosed with depression. Right. If that were the case, everybody would be locked up.
Maybe buy a safe for your guns and don't give them the combination.
Yeah,
that would be a
start. That'd be a good idea.
Doctor, I'm bothered by what 60 Minutes did, because they talked to a family friend who said it was Asperger's. I mean, this is shouldn't that have been backed up? I think it should have been by more. They shouldn't have run it until they actually could confirm that's what it was, because it puts a stigma now on people with Asperger's to some degree.
Well, I think I agree with you, Bob, and I think the thing that I've noticed is that people have been very careful to say, this is not typical for this disorder, and don't blame it on a disorder. We all in these situations want to blame something so we can feel like we can control this from happening again, but we can't. And we can't blame a disorder, we can't blame video games, we can't blame antidepressants. It's a whole bunch of things that lead to an event like this, not one single thing.
Well, I'm glad we all feel better now because of you, Dr. Kelly.
Well, here we go. I'm ruining everybody.
I do thank you for your time, for calling. Yeah, I mean, there just are no answers. And
there really aren't. I wish there were. If there were, I promise I would say it.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Dr. Kelly Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, the Minneapolis Center for Forensic Psychology.